Listen carefully, because what we're about to talk about might sound familiar at first. You've probably already heard that you need to let go, that you shouldn't force things, that you shouldn't try to control everything. But the problem is, most people understand this only on the surface, and that's exactly why nothing changes. They tell themselves, I trust, I've let go. But inside, nothing actually shifts. They still feel the tension. They still check. They still wait. They still look for signs. They still try to figure everything out, just more quietly, more subtly, but the state remains the same. And here's something that might change the way you see this completely. You cannot be in a state of certainty, and at the same time feel the need to make sure everything works. Those two things cannot exist together. But what's even more important, most people don't even realize what they are actually doing. They think the problem is in their actions, that maybe they're doing too much or not enough, that maybe they need a better strategy, a better plan. But the real problem is not what you do, it's what you feel while you're doing it. Because you can be doing all the right things, thinking the right thoughts, following every step you've ever learned, and still get no result. Why? Because your state is still coming from the same place, the place where it's not real yet. Neville Goddard explained this in a very direct way. You don't get what you want. You become the one who already has it. And now, ask yourself honestly, can the version of you who already has it feel pressure, feel doubt, feel the need to check constantly, feel like something might go wrong? No. And this is where everything begins to shift. You're not blocking anything with your actions. You're reinforcing a state, over and over again. And that state says, it's not here yet. Joseph Murphy Gavrilabetum Tak. Your subconscious mind accepts as true what you feel to be real. Not what you say, not what you hope, but what you internally experience as reality. And if that internal experience is tension, waiting, uncertainty, that is exactly what continues. And then you start thinking, maybe this doesn't work. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe it's not for me. But the truth is, it is working perfectly. It is simply reflecting your state. And here's something very subtle, something most people never notice. You cannot force yourself into certainty. You cannot just decide, from now on, I won't worry, and expect everything to change. Because if the feeling is still there, you're just covering it. And when you cover something, it doesn't disappear. It goes deeper. So from the outside, it looks like you've let go. But inside, you're holding on even tighter, and that creates even more pressure. So the shift doesn't happen through trying to fix the feeling. It happens through understanding it. Look at yourself honestly for a moment. When you feel the need to figure everything out, what are you really trying to do? You're trying to guarantee the result. You're trying to make sure it will happen. But underneath that, there is always the same idea. It's not here yet, and I'm not sure it will be. And as long as that idea is alive, nothing truly changes. So instead of fighting that feeling, just notice it. Don't run from it. Don't suppress it. Just admit it to yourself. Right now, I don't feel certain. And something interesting happens in that moment. You stop pretending. You stop playing a role. And for the first time, you actually see where you are. And from there, a different question appears. Not, how do I fix this? Not, how do I stop this? But, who would I be if this was already done? And don't try to answer it with words. Don't analyze it. Just feel the difference between waiting and knowing. It's a very quiet feeling. There's no excitement, no rush, no pressure. It's simple, like something is already settled. And the moment you touch that state, even for a few seconds, everything changes, because there is nothing left to fix, nothing left to force. You're no longer coming from lack. You're moving from a different place. And from that place, things begin to shift naturally. Ideas appear. Decisions become clear. Opportunities show up. Not because you made them happen, but because you became someone who can see them. And here's the key. Don't expect yourself to stay in that state all the time. That's not the goal. The goal is to return to it, again and again. Every time you notice the tension, the checking, the when will it happen, you don't fight it. You just come back, like remembering something you already know. And over time, this becomes easier, more natural, more stable, until one day, you realize you're no longer trying to make things happen. You're no longer questioning everything. You're simply living from a different state. And that changes everything, because life starts to respond differently. Things begin to move, not because you controlled them, but because you stopped coming from the place that was holding everything in place. And that's when you truly understand. You were never controlling the process. You were only repeating a state. And once that state changes, everything else follows. If this resonates with you, not just as words, but as something you can feel, support this video with a like, subscribe to the channel, and come back to it again. Because this is not something you understand once. This is something that unfolds deeper every time you return to it. And at some point, you'll notice. You're no longer asking, what am I doing wrong? Because the answer will already be clear within you.